Hello everyone, amateur meteorologist. First in weather here, it is July 28th, 2020, and we now have potential Tropical Cyclone 9, which will most likely become known as Tropical Storm Isaias. Yes, I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a pretty difficult name, definitely one of the harder ones to pronounce, but this is the Ghost 16 satellite view, current live view, and as you can see, it definitely is more organized than the last video I made. You can definitely see more pockets of convection, more white and black shadings indicating deeper areas and stronger areas of convection. And you can almost see sort of a sliver of banding starting to take shape. We have that one band sort of trying its best to form here, and then, and then you have that other side right here. It's a very broad area of circulation with that general low pressure being right around here and everything just trying to spin around it. This is a notably very large system, about 200 kilometers across, which is pretty big for an invest or even a tropical storm. So when this does develop, this will be a pretty sizable system, it looks like. Not too big, but definitely not a small one either. So that is pretty interesting to watch. If we switch to the visible high-res view, you can see that there definitely is some more organization over the past few hours, especially over the past 24 hours, and you can really see some of those big thunderstorms really trying to wrap around each other, and you're really starting to see some of that convection taking place. Now, one thing I do want to point out is, we get my bearings here. So you can see that we're definitely seeing more of those tops forming, and we can see that some of that wrapping motion with that center likely being somewhere right around here as we speak. You can see that that band right here, and then that secondary band like this. One thing I do want to point out is there's quite a bit of shear. You can see these southerly winds right here pumping in. That is slowing its development quite significantly, or not significantly, but slightly, as the system has taken longer than expected to strengthen and develop. And there are also some things in the future that might be impacting its strength and development, so I'll get into that later in the video. One other thing I do want to touch on is that, if you might recall, I did mention that tropical storm or potential tropical cyclone 9 was likely going to make a sharp northeasterly turn before it really made any sort of significant threat to the United States. That scenario has actually ended up not verifying. There is a good risk, pretty sizable risk, for 40, 50, 60% chance that this will strengthen into a tropical storm and impact the far southeast coast. And there are a couple of reasons for why this is happening and why it isn't making that sharp northeasterly turn. And I will get into those reasons later in the video, so stay tuned. Now, if we go to the official NOAA track, you can see, so it's not officially a tropical storm yet. It's potential tropical cyclone 9. This is the 5 p.m. advisory. It does have a pretty good wind field, but again, it doesn't have enough tropical characteristics for it to be considered officially a tropical storm, but it is expected to strengthen into a tropical storm in the next few hours or so, and then sort of make this gradual northwesterly track. And the reason that it isn't making that northeasterly turn earlier is that its development has been delayed. So it originally was expected to become a tropical storm here, and after that it was expected to start making northwesterly movement. But until it has really sort of formed into a tropical storm, it's been making essentially due west progression. And so that is going to make that northwesterly turn a bit too late, and it's going to make it possible to impact Florida, the southeast, even places like North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina. But right now it looks like Florida does look like to have the greatest risk of seeing some sort of impact from this system, or initial direct impact. Now, here are the model tracks. These are the main ensemble and hurricane models. As you can see, there's very good consensus that this system is going to track steadily northwestwards, basically going right just north of Haiti, and then going about 50 to 100 miles northeast of Cuba. And you can see there's very good model consensus. When you have the models in a very tight line with all those plots or those lines in a very narrow fashion, you can tell that there's a good model consensus. So there's a relatively low chance that the system is going to take a dramatically different track up until this point. Now, this is where the uncertainty increases. As you can see, we have some models going directly into the state of Florida. You have some sort of making that turn a little earlier, so sparing Florida, but maybe giving a bigger impact to these states right here. So again, that is where the uncertainty lies. I think we have pretty good confidence right now that this system will go into a northwesterly track and reach somewhere in this circle. Now, after this is where questions arise. Where will it go from here? Will it continue to make that northwesterly track and then eventually turn when it's inland and thus cause it to weaken very quickly? Or will it sort of linger along the coast and take that northeasterly turn sooner and almost parallel the coast or be just inland? So that's the question that we don't know right now. I'll be looking into the models and seeing what the answer potentially could be in the next couple of minutes. Now, here is the strength forecast. If you might recall in my last video, the models were predicting the strength of the system to be much higher by the time it reached the next 100 or 150 hours. But as you can see, the models have dramatically slowed down. In fact, many take it barely reaching, most actually don't even make it reach category 1 strength, and then already start to have a decrease. And that is mostly because the system has developed so late, it really doesn't have much chance now to significantly strengthen in a low shear optimal environment. Yes, sea surface temperatures are going to be quite warm, but it's a bit of a too little too late sort of scenario. But regardless, a tropical storm is still a big deal. Still has to be paid careful attention to, but the enormous strength that was lofted in the earlier model runs definitely seems to be a diminishing threat. It looks likely that this system is not going to strengthen into a Cat 1, Cat 2, or Cat 3 hurricane and really threaten the East Coast, but would rather be a weaker system, a tropical storm nonetheless, but definitely not a really potent, strong hurricane. Now, here is the GFS parallel model, para model. This is a new addition to the GFS family. It's an improvement. And as you can see, unlike the GFS model that's currently in operation right now, this one actually develops a tropical storm, even a weak hurricane maybe, and this particular model is showing the system not really going into Florida, making that northeasterly turn a bit earlier than expected, and then sort of paralleling the coast before being sucked up into this trough right here and sort of affecting the northeast. And if you look at the upper air pattern right here, you can see why the GFS model is sort of making that system turn northeastwardly, and that is because of this pretty potent trough for July and early August right here. You can see that trough right here. It has northeasterly winds, all right, and so that's going to really make the system want to go northeast. And there's not really a strong high pressure, according to the GFS parallel model, that's going to force the system to go west. So that's what the GFS is saying. That's what the GFS thinks. So if that's the case, this system will be sucked northeastward and then eventually merge with this trough and basically parallel the I-95 corridor basically once it's north of Washington, D.C., and that would have some pretty significant impacts for the Northeast. Some heavy wind, some pretty strong rain, nothing really too significant, but again, some pretty significant impacts, or pretty noticeable impacts for the Northeast. Some of the other models, however, do not show this. For example, the European model, as you can see here, doesn't even really have anything in terms of Tropical Storm Isaias. I hope I'm saying that right, but it doesn't really have anything. You can see it has a bit of something right here, but after that, there's really nothing at all. And if we go through time, we can see that this essentially disappears, and the European really doesn't have anything. So that's definitely an interesting trend, because the European model was actually one of the first models to develop a potent tropical system, but now over the past 3-4 runs has not shown anything at all. So that definitely is very interesting, and it is a trend that will be monitored, because you have the models weakening the strength of the system, its peak strength. You have the European now not even showing anything developing. So there definitely is actually a small chance that this system really might just develop into a tropical depression and then fizzle itself out and become remnants like Tropical Storm Gonzalo. And there is a potential reason for that. If we look at the Saharan dust, you can see that this is where potential Tropical Storm 9 is, right here. So broad circulation, finally starting to tighten up just a bit. And you can see this big plume of Saharan dust stretching all the way to Cuba, right around the system. Now it's moving northwestward as the system also moves northwestward, but it's now going to start to encroach on some very dry air, and this is not good for its development. This dry air in the mid-levels is really going to choke that system, really help limit that convection, and so it is certainly possible that this system will have a very hard time forming and basically having proper strength, as that Saharan dust will limit its true potential. And I think this is what the models are also picking up on, as they're showing that very diminished strength, with the storm really only reaching tropical storm strength. Before, they were showing Cat 2, Cat 3 maybe, but they were not taking into account this really pretty significant Saharan dust plume that will help to limit the system's strength. And the other factor, of course, is that it is strengthening so late. It's going to have more land mass interaction as it goes northwestward. This area of land will help to limit its strength. If it had formed further east, it would have been more strong, more developed, more resilient to this landmass here, and would have maintained Cat 1, Cat 2 strength maybe, and thus posed a greater threat to the east coast. Now, here's the European ensemble. So, regardless, even though the main European model isn't really showing anything, the European ensemble also isn't really showing much. You see, it does have that low pressure right here, further south than what most of the hurricane models have because of its strong high pressure. But after that, you can see nothing from the European at all, the European ensemble even. But I just want to discard that right now, since most of the hurricane models do have the system forming into something potent. And I want you to take a look at the high pressure system, the Bermuda High in the Central Atlantic. So, you can see in my previous video, I was stating how this system would likely make that turn northeast much earlier than anticipated. That obviously has not come to fruition because of that more delayed development, but also because that high pressure has become stronger than expected. You can see that high pressure now stretches all the way, or has sort of an influence all the way to the very edges off the Florida coast, and that will really force the system to go much more westward, even a little bit southward potentially, before it starts to make that turn. So that has really increased the risk for areas along the southeast coast, especially Florida and these areas right here, because that high pressure right here is really forcing that system to go south, and before it can make that sort of northeasterly turn as it gets caught up in this trough right here. Now, if we switch to the GFS, you can see it has some sort of the same thing. The GFS ensemble, or the GEFS, has actually a small system. But again, notice it is not a very potent system. There is not good model agreement on its strength, and many are actually showing a very weak tropical storm. So here you can see that high pressure system is not as strong, but it still is there with those influencing lines, right, or isobars right here, forcing that system to sort of make that due west turn before making a sort of northeasterly track. And as you can see on the GEFS ensemble, as we go through time, that system does then sort of get caught up in this trough, get sucked in, and that is what will allow it to make that northeastwardly turn. Now with the GFS, you can see that high is just a tad to the east, so it makes that northeastwardly turn earlier, sparing Florida, but it then does get sucked up into this trough right here, which allows it to impact the northeast and mid-Atlantic. And now finally, before we close off, here is the NAM 12 kilometer 500 millibar geopotential height. As you can see, we do have a pretty good shortwave trough, or even a pretty good trough actually, coming in the Great Lakes region. This will help to promote some instability over the Great Lakes and interior Northeast over the next couple of days. You will see the potential for some pretty good storms in those areas, basically tomorrow and Thursday. And then after that, we do actually see the development of a pretty good connected trough, which could actually mean some pretty good unsettled weather, a pretty good cold front that will come through. You can see this right here, this very negatively tilted cold front right here, stretching all the way down like this, and that will promote some severe weather, some pretty good storms in the southeast region as we go through the end of this week. And as you can see, as we go further through time, the NAM actually sort of stalls that front right here, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if this is actually going to verify, but that's what the NAM is showing. If we switch to the European model, the European model is actually just as aggressive, if not more. You can see it has that trough all the way connected right here, and so that promotes a much more organized cold front, greater potential for severe weather. So I would definitely say sometime next week is a time to watch. This is for Monday, so a couple of days later than the NAM. So things are definitely not etched in stone. You can see the European also does have that trough forming, but a bit later than the NAM model. So definitely something to watch. Friday, Saturday, And basically through the weekend is when the models are indicating something could develop in sort of a big trough, indicating a large cold front coming through, which could bring a few pretty good thunderstorms for areas east of the Mississippi. Other than that, we do have potential tropical cyclone 9. Definitely not looking like the big, strong potential hurricane that it was looking like before, because of that delayed development, because of that Saharan dust, which will limit its strength to most likely staying a tropical storm, if not a weak Category 1. The key question is whether it will make that northwestwardly turn or northeasterly turn in time. It does look like right now, according to the hurricane models, that most of them are in agreement that it will go west long enough to just enough skid Florida before starting to make that northeasterly turn slightly inland. Again, that might change. Tomorrow I'll have another video more focused on the track. Today was more of a discussion, so tomorrow I will have a video better focused on the track of the storm and potential impacts. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time.